California banning oil. Going back to 1800, it's a pleasure having Ronald Stein, engineer, author, founder at PTS Advance. Good afternoon, Ronald.
Armando, glad to be aboard.
Thank you so much. Ronald, please, again, this picture, I love this picture. 27% of oil is used to make iPhones, private planes, etc. So, are these resources being banned in the state of California, in addition to transportation and other residence heating? So, are they doing what with oil in California?
Well, yeah. Well, if you want to talk California, be specific. California has been on a campaign to reduce oil. At the same time, our demands for the products from oil keep increasing. Well, when you take a look at where we're at, we have in California, I think there's 9 international airports and like 42 military airports, all of which are requiring fuel. And we have shipping terminals from San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, bringing in products not only for California, but for the whole country.
The whole country.
Which require fuel. And California has, historically, we have successfully reduced our oil production. Back in 1995, California was 95% independent. Between California oil production and the oil we got from Alaska, we accounted for 95% of the state's needs. Well, since 95, that 5% has grown to more than 60% dependent on outside sources. We keep reducing in-state production while demand is going up, so we're importing like 60%.
But because the reserves were reducing? No.
No. We keep reducing oil production. We keep canceling permits.
Oil production, not reserves.
And existing wells have to be, space around them has to be clear. So we're shutting down oil production.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And Governor Newsom wants to cut oil production further, which would increase our demands from other countries. And at the same time, we're decreasing the demands. We have, California's big. We have 140 airports.
Wow.
A lot of them are small. But of that, there's 9 international ones and 41 military airports. And they're the primary reason we're consuming 13 billion gallons of aviation fuel every year. But we're eliminating our oil supply. So where's the aviation fuel going to come from? We got, ports, as I mentioned, from San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco.
Very famous ports, worldwide ports.
Yeah, huge ports.
International ones.
These ships need fuel to get back to where they came from. And we keep reducing oil. Well, how are we going to fuel those? And the governor doesn't want to talk about it. He's on his mission to eliminate crude oil exploration in California. He's yet to inform the citizens of the state or the citizens of America, since we're the 4th largest economy in the world, how he expects airports and ports to continue operating without the fuel for planes and ships. Unanswered question. And like I say, he just keeps wanting to reduce oil production and, go to EVs and go to wind turbines and solar panels. But as I mentioned to you in the past, all the parts and components for wind turbines, all the parts and components for solar panels, and all the parts and components for EVs are made with the oil derivatives manufactured from crude oil. Hey, I'm all for getting rid of crude oil, but hey, where's the backup plan? We're a materialistic society. And that's the thing that we have got to focus on. How are we going to maintain all the materials that people have just become accustomed to? You flip the light switch on, but the light switch was made with oil. Everything. As I mentioned, try and identify something in your house, your workplace, the hospital. It was not made with the oil derivatives from fossil fuels. And without a backup plan, it's going to be shortages and inflation in perpetuity.
And the economic balance of this state, because if you import everything you need in terms of oil, you spend a lot of money importing oil.
You know, I'm more concerned about the emissions elsewhere. The term within the Environmental Regulation in California is we're not supposed to leak emissions somewhere else. You know, because California is the most environmentally controlled location in the world. If you want to build anything, you want to build it here. It'd be the cleanest. But to have it built somewhere else or manufactured somewhere else, their emissions are greater. And so you're right, it's costing it, you know, to bring in, but we're also increasing emissions by having somebody else do it. You know, we can't see it, you know, so it's okay, you know, and that is, like I say, we're basically letting China, India, Brazil, you know, they have less environmental controls than we do, and the labor laws aren't as strict as ours. And so, yeah, the emissions, world emissions are increasing to meet our demand for the products.
Ronald, how this mindset was constructed? I mean, so different from other states close to California, like Texas, very progressive, but at the same time installing new factories, manufacturing plants, and California leaving these opportunities. What's the difference? Mindset is made.
I think the confusion starts the overuse of the word energy. Because we really have to talk, we want electricity or do we want products? Because to keep, you know, the mindset of the politicians, policymakers is wind and solar is going to replace fossil fuels. But wait a minute, wind turbines and solar panels can generate electricity. They can manufacture no products. And you compare that to crude oil, which is basically never used for generating electricity. Coal is, natural gas is, but oil isn't. Oil is useless. It's black tar, unless you can refine it into something usable. And when you go through a refining process, you come up with different fuels, you know, for trucks and ships and planes and rocket launches and, you know, trucks and automobiles. And then you get all the oil derivatives that makes all the products in our society. These products didn't exist before 1800, you know, and so that's the confusion because oil and wind and solar, they do different things. But all the politicians keep talking about energy. Wind and solar is going to replace oil. Can't happen because they do different things. And when you get down to the basics, all the parts and components of wind turbines, solar panels, and EVs are made with the oil derivatives manufactured from crude oil. So if you get rid of crude oil, you're getting rid of wind turbines, solar panels, and EVs, and you know, we're going back to the 1800s.
But let me insist a little bit more, because Texas is investing in solar, wind a lot. The grid is unstable because this intermittent energy is coming to the grid.
Right.
But at the same time, Texas focus on manufacturing plants, some of coming from California to Texas. So how these people can think losing manufacturing plants, jobs, I cannot understand.
Well, I think it's coming to reality that all they do is generate electricity. They're not doing anything else for society. And everybody, you know, all politicians, if you're not drinking the Kool-Aid, you may not get reelected. So if you deny it on the campaign trail, now you're a denier and you may not get reelected. So, you know,
that's the point. The
yeah,
point, yeah,
you got to basically be talking the same story of the other politicians that will beat up on you. And, you know, in the public, that's all they hear. So, but the reality is, you know, like I say, wind and solar have limitations. They can only generate electricity. And if you think further, everything that needs electricity is made with the oil products that come out of fossil fuels.
Talking about this point, extending a little bit to EVs, in terms of safety, operational safety, and you are an engineer, I'm an engineer too, so we know exactly what does it mean in terms of risks and human problems. So how do you compare EVs with gasoline cars in terms of safety, looking to the entire end-to-end process?
Well, you have to take a look at not only the safety, but the usability, because most people need transportation for, like I said, you need a workhorse vehicle, because it's not just going back and forth to work or back and forth to school, because they're taking their kids and they're moving products. And, I was taking a look at the 25 best-selling vehicles in America. And of the 25 best-selling vehicles in America, most of them are trucks and SUVs, very few sedans. But I got to classify the Tesla as a small sedan. And, most people want a bigger vehicle because they got more things to carry. And, so if you got, kids, you got, strollers and all this stuff. Well, you can't put that into a Tesla, sedan. And so, basically the larger vehicles, and the larger the vehicle, the higher the price if it's an electric version. And most people can't afford, the sedan. So it's a combination of usability as well as, safety, because, we have the fire potentials, from batteries, and, the replacement cost. The automobile industry survives on the used car market, but there is no used car market in the EV sector.
No.
You don't want to buy old technology.
Oh, no.
And
Only new cars.
And if it's a chance you have to replace that battery, well, that could be $10,000 or $20,000 to replace the battery. So, yeah, there is no used car market. And I guess my concern is, I played golf with some dealers, and they're starting to see the inventory building up, because the elites have bought them. The elites will continue to buy them. But Armando, I think we're running out of elites. Now we're getting down to the common folk.
So Robin Hood, inverse Robin Hood, no?
Yes, that's right.
So take from poor people and give to the rich people.
Well, like I say, the one of the problems I see with the EVs is the profile of the EV owners is they're wealthy, they're well-educated, usually 1 or 2 degrees, high income, multi-car family. I mean, that's almost a given. It's a multi-car family. Most households aren't multi-car families. You can't afford 2 cars. And, I've got a neighbor who has 3 cars, 2 SUVs parked outside, and an EV parked on the garage. I never see the EV being used. I mean, because they're all constantly going back and forth to work, or, taking the kid to school. But if the EV comes out, it's just to run a short haul. And most people don't have that flexibility to have extra vehicles, especially expensive vehicles. And so we live in a community that has a lot of EVs. But in California, we got the most temperate climate in the country. It never gets too hot, never gets too cold. We never get a lot of rain. And so it's convenient to, run an errand or two, and, I'm saving the world, I'm going green, But in reality, it's not the workhorse. But most families need a workhorse vehicle, and a reliable one. And, when you don't have, part of the problem too is the fact California has been on this campaign because of all the EVs in the entire country. In the entire country of America, about 40% of them are in California. And so when you think about it, well, the other 60% is divided amongst the other 49 states. Armando, that's an easy calculation. That's like a little bit more than 1% per state. They don't exist anywhere else. Especially when you got cold climate and, rain and tornadoes and, inclement weather. You want a reliable workhorse. And so, I think the auto industry has been somewhat mandated into a death spiral. And you're starting to see that. You see articles coming out about Ford's losing so much per vehicle. And, some of the plants that they're planning on building are not going to build. But, now we're getting down to reality. And in California, 2035, that's only, 12 years away. And 12 years goes pretty quick. And I think the auto industry is going to really be suffering, and it'll be interesting. I'm seeing more and more people in articles, talking about this, and I've been talking about it for a couple of years, and now there's hundreds of others talking about the same subject because, the reality is starting to hit.
Talking about EVs and batteries, so China has control, power of over several minerals that needed to EVs, batteries, and so. So will California invade China to recover this material?
Of course not. But you're right. Yeah. China controls all the exotic minerals and metals. In fact, when Todd Roy and I wrote that book, Clean Energy Exploitations, the one that got nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, it was to bring transparency to the fact that all those exotic minerals and metals are being built in developing countries like China and Africa. And, like I say, we're exploiting people that have yellow, brown, and black skin to mine for this stuff. There's no labor laws. You got kids, 6 years old mining for this stuff by hand. And so humanity is being exploited, and the land, the environmental degradation is atrocious, but it's okay because it's over there. We can't see it. But if, I know here in America, there's lithium deposits, but if you want to mine for it, you got to get a permit. And lithium mining is some of the dirtiest mining available and requires a lot of water. And we don't have a lot of extra water here in the States. And it's like, say, coal mining is clean compared to lithium. And so if you mine for it here, you'd have to, adhere to the environmental laws and the labor laws, which would just drive up the cost of lithium. And you can't afford to drive up the cost of lithium because the battery is too expensive right now. So the price of EVs would just go through the roof.
Ronald, I'm not sure I'm correct or not, but I remember that California has a special gasoline, a special blend of gasoline. Is it correct?
That's correct. And no one else in the country makes it.
And refining internally or importing?
What's really worse is California is an energy island. There are no pipelines between California and the rest of the country because we got the Sierra Mountains in the way. And so, if there was, you could basically refine it in a different state and just, pipeline it over. Well, there's no pipeline, so you have to bring it in by truck or train. And the environmentalists won't let that happen. So, we're an energy island. What we do here is used here and refined here. And again, like I say, the governor is on a campaign to eliminate oil production. Well, if you eliminate oil production, you're promoting the fact you really don't want the oil industry. But all the demands are for oil, and you haven't got a replacement. Like I say, when you're consuming, 13 billion gallons of aviation fuel, for all the international airports we have and all the military we have here, that's got to come from somewhere. And if it doesn't come from California, it's going to come from basically a foreign country. And now you talk about, security risks.
Sure. So California imports from other countries, India and other gasoline, red gasoline, I mean, with the specs for the special gasoline that is needed for that.
For any price, they'll do anything.
Oh my God, that's a good point. What's the price for this special refining processes?
Well, California, our price usually, a couple dollars more per gallon than the rest of the country. I mean, I just gassed up my car and I think it was almost $6 a gallon.
I have some numbers here. 39 million people, 14 refineries. That's the same number of Brazil, 14 refineries. 2 million barrels of crude oil per day. Brazil is 2.5. It's so similar to Brazil. And banning oil. Brazil is in the opposite directions. It's exploring a lot, increasing, growing the exploration production.
You're right, because a lot of the countries that have oil don't have the demand. We have the demand, but we don't have the oil. So it's got to come from somewhere. And and like I say, we don't have a backup plan, and the governor wants to get rid of what little oil there is left, and he would like to get rid of, the refining industry as well, and, have a clean state, and we just live off of EVs. And like I say, our demand is up, but he doesn't know. I guess he doesn't know. We got, military and international airports. I mean, if you're flying anywhere, you're probably connecting somewhere in San Francisco, Los Angeles, or San Diego to get to places like Hawaii and China and that type of thing. So it's like I say, there's no backup plan, and he just wants to eliminate the emissions from oil, but it's killing the economy, and it's really tough on the people that can least afford it, because everything's going up in price.
Yeah. So next year, United States has new elections for presidency, of governors, I suppose, too. So
Yes.
to expect some change in terms of decisions, not politically speaking, but in terms of energy, something that can happen.
Well, eventually it has to happen. Like, like I say, take Biden. I mean, as I mentioned, we have all the generals represent the Army, the Marines, the Navy, the space program.
Experienced people.
Experienced people. No one is asking. Now, Biden has the same philosophy as our Governor Newsom in California. He wants to, cancel oil drilling permits. He wants to get rid of oil. We're going to live off of, wind and solar. And not one general has asked him the question, how are we going to run our militaries, ships, planes, and all the products they use? How are you going to run the militaries without
I cannot
oil
understand
in the
this.
products?
But why? Is there a reason, a specific reason?
The only thing I could think of, Armando, is these guys are too close to retirement and they don't want to jeopardize their position.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Because if they embarrass the president, they'll probably get fired.
But there is a secretary, Secretary of State, Granholm, is an energy secretary. So does she have, independence in terms of thinking and direction, or some groups are forcing her to say those rules?
Well, again, you can't go against the masses, and the masses of politicians are all thinking the same. They have the confusion about the word energy. And,
It's a very good point.
We're a materialistic society, and no one is addressing how are we going to maintain that materialistic society, because generating electricity is not going to do it. Because if you have no products that need electricity, if there's no iPhones around and no TVs and no defibrillators around, you don't need electricity.
This concept is very strong. So instead of energy, let's replace by energy on one side and products on another side. That's
electricity and products.
electricity and products.
Yeah. I try and not use the word energy as much as possible, because it's confusing. Because if you want to talk wind and solar, let's talk wind and solar. But wind and solar has limitations. It can only generate electricity. And if you want to talk, oil, it doesn't generate electricity. All it does is make products. Well, You know, they do
Yeah.
different things.
And Ronald, what's your opinion about hydrogen in this cycle?
Very expensive to make,
Uh-huh.
and you need oil to make it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So, yeah, it get down to the same thing. I would love to get rid of oil. I'm not married to it, but there's no backup plan. And hydrogen is very, very expensive to make, and you know, I just don't see it being a long-term solution. It has potential, but no, I think we're pretty much, when you take a look at the world's been around like 4.5 billion years. And from 1800 to now, and maybe we have enough oil for, a couple hundred more years. But, 500-year window in an Earth that's been around for 4.5 billion years, that's like existence of a tenth of a tenth of a tenth of a second in the lifespan of the Earth. And so when we run out of oil, we're going to run out of products. And if we run out of products, like say the wealthy countries that are enjoying the la la land are going to basically have to, back down, let's say moving back to the 1800s when we had no products. And the other 6 billion people, they've got nothing to lose. They got nothing now. And those are the ones that I feel sorry for, because they would like to enjoy the same lifestyle we're living, have medications, clean water, and clean sanitation, and be able to, fly somewhere. But yeah, they live like people did, several hundred years ago. Most people didn't live past 40 years of age, and most people, when they're born, very seldom travel 100 miles from where they were born. And like I say, we talk about our materialistic society, but in reality, Armando, we shouldn't forget that there's 80% of the population, which is more than 6 billion, they're living on less than $10 a day. And, I would love to have all these environmental conferences, hold them in the Congo. They won't do that because there's no place to land their private jets.
Ronald, what the influencers, I mean, famous people, leaders in the United States are talking about this. Yesterday, I saw an interview with Bill Gates. It was confusing, and he was nervous. And the interviewer asked him about climate change, and he didn't answer very well. So what do you see these people driving the mindset in the United States?
Well, I think the same thing. Now Gates is investing in nuclear. He's basically one of the investors on nuclear. But again, most people, I would really love to see our politicians, our policymakers, the movie stars stop using the word energy. Because what do you want? Do you want electricity, or do you want products? Because that's what they're talking about. They're talking about wind and solar and oil. Well, they do different things. And if you want electricity, well, supposedly clean electricity is going to come from wind and solar, but it's only intermittent electricity. You can't run a hospital on intermittent electricity. And, to shut down the continuous uninterruptible electricity we have for occasional electricity, I would like to have that further discussion with them. And then if you want electricity, you need to make the components to build a wind turbine, to build the solar panel. And how are you going to do that without oil?
Yeah. Interesting.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. Let me show a comment from Christian Lombardini. I agree with Ronald Stein. Using energy allows people to hijack the conversation. Using the word electricity brings the conversation back home to the practical. Thanks. Great comment. There is another one. Let's see. Thank you, Armando. This is an important conversation. I think, yes, really is. With Ronald Stein, it's always a great conversation.
As mentioned, Armando, I would like to get the common folk to talk about energy literacy at the dinner table. all my articles, all my books are in layman's terms. There are no formulas and graphs and charts because, people get confused. But get down to the basics. And I think the basics are electricity and products. Before the 1800s, we had no products. And we also had no electricity because the products came before electricity. Because everything that needs electricity, your television, your iPhone, your iPad, the defibrillator, is made from those oil products. And if you only want to generate electricity, there'll be nothing that needs power because you won't be able to make anything.
And people are receiving well this kind of conversation or small groups only. It's not a kind of, because my point is not the population taking control of these decisions.
Well, all the conversations I have in the podcast, in my articles, how they're received, are understanding that. The problem with the politicians and the policymakers is they won't converse. I would just love to have a conversation with them. Like say, you want to get rid of oil? That's fine. What's your backup plan? How are you going to build the parts to build your wind turbine? How are you going to build the parts to build your Tesla? Because all the electronics and all all the components. I looked at, the cars today are much more fuel efficient and environmentally friendly because the cars of, 50 years ago, they were smoking away. Yeah. And you open up the hood and you could hide two of your buddies under the hood. There's all that space next to the engine. I opened up the hood of my, car and there's no room to put a sandwich in there. it's all this environmental control stuff. I think there's an engine in there somewhere, but it's like I say, they're much more fuel efficient and cleaner, and that's what we got to focus on: conservation and efficiencies.
Yes.
Because that's going to get us. Because right, because eventually we'll run out of oil, and it's either going to be within our kids or their kids' lifespan. And, because presently we're extracting billions of gallons of crude oil out of the earth every day. And I don't care how big the reservoir is, it's eventually going to run dry. So we want to conserve as much as we can and be as efficient as much as we can be and not waste it because, like I say, we're competing with nature. And it seems to keep on going without the products, but we need the products.
So the conclusion could be California, do not ban oil because you can be back to 1800s.
Like I say, that's where we're going. In the 1800s, they had no oil. They had nothing. They had no products. They also had a lifespan of like 40 years of age, and they never traveled. So, of course, if you don't travel, then you don't need the international airports. So,
it's a cascade. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Another
Armando,
day. It's a pleasure. It's a classroom.
Always enjoyable talking with you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day.
Okay. Have a great one.